Hey everybody, Mr. Musak back here again as we continue our journey through the late 19th century. Today we're going to focus on urbanization and immigration. So please make sure these notes are done before this Thursday when we start talking about the urbanization and immigration movements in the United States. So going from here, the urbanization. Urbanization simply means people move to cities. Now, question is why? And a big part of that is the idea of industry, having a job. As always, big factories get going. People start flocking to the cities. Remember, were people making money farming at this point? No. So you move back to the city and you start working at a factory. Here's the problem though. As cities get bigger and bigger and bigger, how do you grow? You keep growing out, okay? You're going to take up more land. Instead, we grow up. With the invention of the idea of the skyscraper. There's one point around 1860 or so when one of the tallest buildings in the United States is maybe 6-7 stories tall. That's it. That's excluding, the Capitol building, those kind of things. Talking 6-7 stories, that is it, because the iron, the tools they have at the time can't do enough to make sure that the building doesn't fall apart. Instead now, as we create steel, we can have steel girders, more strength, able to build these really tall buildings. The other big invention here is the elevator. Now, the idea of the elevator allows people to move up and down these big, tall buildings. Now, you might think, who cares, right? Let's say we have a 60-story building, give or take, all right? That's a little skyscraper. 50, 40, 50, 60 stories. How many times a day do you want to walk up, 60 flights of stairs? Not going to happen. You always got to have the elevator as a way to make sure that you can get up and down the building. To top it off from there, you have always people in town, the roads are going to be clogged. Here's a picture of New York City. You can tell this is not a paved road here. You have people, horses, mud, manure, all those kind of things here in the roads. And eventually we start using the electricity to do like electric streetcars. Eventually we use electric trains for the subway. All these things create these big, huge cities in the United States. Okay, for example, the subway, you kind of see one of the first subway cars right here in the city of Boston. We create those public transportation. Now, immigration is a big topic I want to talk about today. And so hopefully it'll be a real quick look at immigration here. Now, questions from where and when. Now, we kind of see three different phases of immigration in the United States from Europe. The first phase from 1850 to 1840 was really from Great Britain, Northern Europe. So we're talking like, Great Britain, Germany, Norway, those kind of places. In the 1840s, is Northern Western Europe. So basically the same places before, a lot more German people now, Slavic people, Polish, those kind of things. Heading to the last little part, in the 1890s, we're talking about now, we see a big influx of people from Eastern and Southern Europe. We're talking like Serbia, like where Tesla was from. We're talking Italy. We're talking Greece, Yugoslavia, Russia, those kind of areas. We see a lot more people come from now in the late 1890s versus Britain, those kind of places. Now, the trip over. I understand a lot of people, especially the poor people, had to come here on a steamship. A steamship at this time takes 7 to 10 days to get across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, still a lot faster than the old wooden sailing ships, but still a long trip. Most people, if you weren't real rich, you traveled in steerage. Steerage was pretty terrible conditions. It was very, very simple, very, very bare. You can see a lot of people crowded in here on these two pictures. Notice the bunks are right in the big public area. Very, very little privacy in this part. It was very dirty. You had mice, you had rats, you had disease. And sometimes to get a whole family over, you spend your entire life savings trying to get on this steamship in steerage. A lot of times, maybe one person at a time ago, maybe the father would go over first, get a job, get some money, send the money back to Europe, and then get the rest of the family to come over for that trip over. Now, when you get to the United States, you came to usually one or two places, either Ellis Island or Angel Island. Ellis Island being in New York, Angel Island being in California. Now, if you're rich, if you're in first or second class, you didn't have to go through this whole big complex process of checking out who you were. Instead, you just walked right in the country, you're good to go. If you were rich, you were all set. If you came over in steerage, you had to make sure you were a good option for citizenship. So, you had to answer 29 questions. We're actually going to answer these questions in class on Thursday. But you had to answer 29 different questions just to make sure you were good enough to be a citizen. All kinds of different questions we're going to look at. They had to answer. And if you didn't answer it right, good chance you could be deported. Then you had to do a health exam. you had to make sure you met certain health codes. The biggest test was by far an eye exam. There was an eye disease, kind of almost like a much more serious version of almost like a pink eye, a much more serious version of it that you had to check people's eyes for. And so to do that, they used this little hook to lift up your eyelid and make sure that you didn't have this eye infection. Now, if you didn't pass any of the health codes, you get sent back as well. That looks really painful, by the way. Now, if you did not pass, you were deported. Every single year, thousands of potential immigrants were deported. All right, so you were sent out of the country. It could be for anything: diseases of the skin or eye, other kind of diseases. If you were an anarchist, that meant that you would disagree with the government. If you were a slave laborer in our countries, those kind of things, you were sent out, sent home. These big mass areas. There's actually top pictures on top of Ellis Island, where it's basically a big outside dormitory area where you then sent back to your home country. Now, the thing is, more people were allowed to come into the country than were sent home. And one of the places at Ellis Island where you met was called the Kissing Post, right back here, where basically you met your family, you met the people you came over there with, or you were meeting in the New World to start your new life. Currently, there's a really kind of a cool plaque over there in Ellis Island. If you've ever been there, you haven't, go there, check it out, where you can find all people who went through Ellis Island. In fact, I worked with a former teacher who went there and found her great-great-grandparents who came over from Italy and found exactly where they had come through and met at that very spot. Kind of cool when you think about it. Now, obviously, on top of Ellis Island today is the Statue of Liberty. It actually was a gift from France in 1886, kind of a way to help celebrate the centennial of the United States in 1876. But you notice it's green. It's made of hammered copper, and that green color is what it turned with the oxidation of that copper. It was designed to do that, actually. It was put in Ellis Island, top of the Army Fort, as a way to help welcome all these new immigrants into the United States, into New York City. And there's a little poem on there. I'll read the poem for you real quick. It reads, "Giving your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." And we're asking you guys on your notes to tell me what you think that actually means. Okay, so in your notes, tell me what you think that poem means in your notes. We're going to talk about it on Thursday because it kind of tells a lot about this time period and why people are coming over here. So the question is, why immigrate? Why come here? Now, honestly, right now, immigration is a huge issue in this country, considering immigration from all different parts of the world, especially Latin America. So what do you think of this? First off, just kind of hit pause for a second. After I'm done talking, hit pause in a second, and just write down, why do people come to the United States today? Why do people actually want to come here today is a big question. So I'm going to hit pause. You hit pause. Come back in a minute or two, and we list down why you think people want to immigrate today. All right, guys, thank you for doing that. So we'll talk about why you think people are immigrating today in class on Thursday. But remember, there's always going to be push and pull factors for immigration. Push factors are things that drive people away from where they are. So if they're coming here from Italy, what's pushing them out of Italy? Pull factors are things that say, hey, come over here and check it out. Pull factors are things that say, hey, why do you want to come here? So here's some of the big push factors of this time. First off, in Europe, there's not a lot of land available. Land is very, very scarce. A lot of farmland is taken up, a lot of overcrowded cities. A lot of times families didn't have enough land to give to sons, those kind of things. So not a lot of land available. United States, all kinds of land. So come here, pick land up. There's revolutions happening in Europe at this time. So a lot of governments are new in these countries, like Italy, Germany. They have new governments forming in first in the 1840s, then the 1860s, then the 1870s. A lot of them leave their country to get away from the political revolution issues. So some support the old governments, they're forced to leave. Some just leave to get away from the war and the fighting, that kind of stuff. My dad's side came here from Germany in 1848 because they wanted to get away from a political revolution. There's a revolution happening in what was called Prussia then, and that's why my family came here to get away from those political problems. There's political and religious persecution. Persecution means basically people being picked on for something. So some religious groups were being harassed in some countries, whether it be Jews or Catholics or certain other groups. And so they said, fine, I'm sick of stuff here, leaving. Some people had certain political beliefs that were not well accepted in their own country. And so the same thing, they left and got out of town and came here to the United States where we have, the right to believe what we want to believe. Also poverty. A lot of times farmers in the old world, in Europe were forced to work in factories. So really long hours, really poor conditions, and they don't have their farmland to kind of start their own farm. Well, over here, all kinds of land, a chance to make that money and get away from poverty and come here and do that. Pull factors are the same thing. Here in the United States, we have those freedoms, so things in the Bill of Rights. Chance to choose your government, choose your leaders, religious freedom, freedom of speech. Come over here, Get those ideas. Jobs. All kinds of great industrial jobs available. Work in a factory, that kind of stuff. Land. Come here, get a farm, make a living for yourself, all those things. And all those things kind of combine together for hope for a new life. Some people thought they'd come here, hit the restart button, and start right over with their lives and live a great life here. And honestly, a lot of these immigrants honestly thought that the streets of America were paved with gold. They had the idea in their head that if you came here, anybody, hit the right break and make it rich. There are a lot of stories going over how immigrants made money. Guys like Andrew Carnegie, guys like John D. Rockefeller, who were poor, or at least maybe not rich, and became billionaires. Unfortunately, it doesn't normally happen for everybody. Because the immigrant lifestyle was not a glamorous thing. Usually immigrants settled amongst people they knew. Okay, in big cities, they would make these family neighborhoods or ethnic enclaves. So you go to big cities, you have like Chinatown, Little Italy. Usually people from the certain areas all kind of settled in the same place because they knew each other, knew the language, knew the culture, all those ideas. Language-wise, a lot of times adults did not learn English. They still spoke their traditional language, whether it be Polish or Italian or whatever. Now kids pick up language a lot easier than adults do. So a lot of times you had kids who would be able to speak English and their home language as well. You might speak Italian at home, but then you speak English out amongst people. So a lot of people learned too that the streets were not paved with solid money. A lot of times families lived together. We're talking 4 to 5 families on the floor of an apartment building. They call those apartment buildings tenements. And I will show you some pictures of these in class, but you all worked together, you all pooled your resources, and you made do with what you had. And so it was really tight, cramped conditions. Traditional-wise, some people tried to conform with traditional practices and or keep what they had. So you either try to become more American or you keep what you had and you brought over. Food is the biggest thing, okay? Families always brought different food traditions. So like Italy brought pasta and pizza. Poland brought pasties and dumplings, those kind of things. And food becomes a very, very big part of the culture here as you start mixing things together. You have your traditional foods, but plus you start kind of moving them, changing them. And we'll talk more about that as we get to more things in class. But traditions definitely become a big part of the immigrant lifestyle as well. Job-wise, for a lot of immigrants, jobs are tough. A lot of times they're forced to work in factories doing what's called unskilled labor. Unskilled labor means you don't need a real true skill to that job. Basically, you don't need to teach anything advanced. A big part of that was language barrier. If you could run a lever, push a button, run a sewing machine, it didn't matter what language you spoke, you could do it. And a lot of times these immigrants end up working in sweatshops. Sweatshops like this down here, we have a lot of people crammed into a small area, cranking out tons of material in a day. Very, very dangerous, not a lot of safety devices available. Long hours, 12, 14, 16-hour days for very, very low pay. And a lot of times you even had to do what's called piece work, where you got paid for every single piece you made. So if you were sewing, say, neckties, whatever, okay? You'd only get paid for every single necktie you made. Every single necktie you made that you screwed up, you get money taken away. It was not paid by the hour, it was paid by the piece. Now, there are some groups that were not big fans of immigration, just like today. They're called nativists. And it started to put restrictions on immigration. So they didn't like immigration for a lot of different reasons. One big reason was religion. They thought other people coming in might, hurt the kind of Protestant America. So Catholics especially, Jewish people, those kind of deals. People were kind of afraid of new religions coming in. Taking jobs. So you see this picture up here about, shall American labor be protected from foreign competition? Those kind of things were big issues back then people were really worried about. Idea of anarchists, people who were different government ideas were getting kicked out of their own country. Like this bottom picture shows these garbage haulers here dumping people on the Statue of Liberty. So you kind of see a lot of those issues come up there. Raises is part of it too. Eventually in the 1880s, the United States signed something called the Chinese Exclusion Act, where nobody was allowed to emigrate here from China for 10 years. No Chinese person was allowed citizenship. And we'll talk more about that later on too, as kind of races play a role in it as well. In the end, though, we create essentially this issue of the melting pot in the United States. We have this big, huge mix of nationalities, of immigrants from all over the world, and we start mixing traditions, languages, foods. All these things start melting together into one big America. And we'll kind of talk about how we see this melting pot more in class on Thursday. Thanks for listening, guys. These notes are due Thursday. Use the video plus your book. Make sure they're ready to go so we can discuss and have a good time on Thursday. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to you later.